Welcome to the saddest episode of Orange Perspective. I have Katelynn here. I should be wearing black.
It's my funeral.
Tell the audience why I am sad today, Katelynn.
Well, Friday is my last day, y'all. I will be leaving.
You're
gone.
heading out.
I'm heading out. Yeah.
You didn't get fired,
I did not get fired.
but it's only Tuesday.
So
You
still have opportunities,
I
Jason.
hate people that leave. I hate people leaving and leaving on their own volition. So sometimes I fire them before they leave.
Do you maybe want to think about firing me 5 o'clock
So
on Friday?
I have the upper hand.
Yeah.
That would be too late. I need to fire you like at a random time on Thursday at like 1 o'clock, right while right now. And this podcast spins.
See you later.
Right now.
We're done.
And this podcast is about this. You are fired. I've
This is
never
me.
fired someone on a podcast before.
It's very public.
I do like the format though for
Yeah.
firing.
Yeah.
We could go through the whole thing of why do you think you got fired? What could you have done better?
Stages of grief.
Yeah, this is like an exit interview for someone who got fired. No, for real, you are leaving on Friday. You let us know a couple months ago.
Yeah.
You let some people know a couple months ago, and
Some
then
people.
you let me know a little bit later because you were scared to tell me.
I was nervous. I was scared to tell you.
Why?
Well, because I didn't want to disappoint you. I don't want to disappoint you. I don't want to disappoint Jimmy. Not that like leaving is a disappointment, but that's a big change, you know?
It is a big change. I mean, losing you is a big deal. You've been
Yeah.
with us how many years?
It would be 7 in September.
7 years. So yeah. So you didn't. Were you scared? You were worried.
No, I was maybe a little both. Yeah, maybe a little both. Maybe a
what?
little scared.
What?
Maybe a little both.
A little both. I was a
Maybe a
little
little
both.
scared, maybe a little worried.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had the idea of firing you right when you told me.
You're like, bye. See?
Like, oh, you're leaving in 2 months. Nope, you're leaving in 2 hours.
Good.
Get your stuff and
riddance.
get out of here. Man, what a sad week, but also a happy week for you. You're moving
Yeah.
on into the next stage of life and
Yeah.
whatever that might be. And I always think that everyone comes back around, so I think we'll see you again in a few years
Yeah.
when you decide you want to do something different. And
Stay-at-home mom life
Yeah.
is no longer. It's too
Yes.
hard.
Okay, let's go ahead and jump in. Why are you leaving us?
I am leaving to be a stay-at-home mom with my son Adler. He's going to be turning 4 soon, and I'm really excited to spend some more time with him. And we're wanting to have more kids too, so hopefully in the future that'll come back.
What was it that was the impetus to making this decision? Was there an event? Was there a conversation? Was it just lurking around for a while? Where did it come from?
There were a couple of things. So like it's something that I've kind of liked the idea of, but I never thought would be a reality because my husband was thinking about being a professor, being a teacher, and I was just like, I'm never going to be a stay-at-home mom. There's no way we could survive on like
Never
a
gonna make
teacher
enough money.
salary.
That's right.
So I was like, and I was okay with that. Like I liked my job and I really liked who I worked with. And so I felt like I was fine with that decision. And then this past fall, he got a new opportunity at Gray Construction, which is a local construction company. They're international. And he's been doing really well, and he's been growing a lot in his role. And so that just kind of opened the opportunity to like, man, maybe this could be something that I could do. Another thing I was thinking about was like, so my mother-in-law, she's been really gracious, and she's like been watching Adler all this time, so the last 4 years, and I've just been really thankful for her for like putting her life on hold to like take care of him and let us like continue our journeys and our careers. So and I think that she wants to get back into the workforce, and I want her to do that. And so, and obviously I want to spend more time with my kids. So there's several factors, but that's kind of the gist of it for sure.
I mean, I think it fits you. You like to bake. You bring
Yeah.
in baking. You're very motherly. I don't know.
Yeah.
All those things that kind of I think of as someone who just like enjoys the idea of motherhood.
Yeah.
And being around your children and help, raising them and all of those things. We've had conversations about all that, and I think it fits your personality, and we're excited for you. Just sad.
Yeah, it's bittersweet for me as well.
Yeah.
Because I'm excited, but I'm very sad. I love everybody that I work with. You all have been awesome to work for, and just the opportunities that you've given me, I'm incredibly thankful for, and I've learned so much.
Well, we're incredibly thankful for you. Remind me what you did before you started with us.
I was retail. I was in retail.
That's
I
right.
worked for Lush Cosmetics. Yeah.
What did you do? You were a sales associate or
I was
something?
just a sales associate. They had me on their leadership team. But at the point where I decided that I no longer wanted to work retail hours, I wanted something more consistent, is when they were considering moving me to a MIT role. And then I was like, yeah, sorry, I got something else. And that's when I started working here, answering phones.
Yeah, okay, so here's how I would like to spend our time together. You can say if you don't want to do this, but I've already told you that this is what I want to do. Let me just see. I feel like this is what happens, and I'll say something, and then we'll go a different direction. So we can go a different direction if you'd really like to. If you have your heart set on just talking about motherhood the whole time, we can just dive into that and the art of being a good mother. I'm sure it's science, too. Science and art go together.
Yeah.
I have lots of questions about that. But what I would like to do during our time together is talk about your journey with us from beginning to end and where you started, the different roles you had, and then kind of what you learned along the way and the lessons that you learned. I think most people in our audience are very interested in this path of how you go from where you started as answering phones to the head of employee experience, or the head of the people, or whatever we call you. What did I kept getting it wrong at the beginning.
There's so many.
So
Lucas calls me the head of the people as a joke.
The head of the
but,
people.
Yes, but my official title, if you were to look at my email, is head of employee experience. So you had it right. I think that's what you said the first time.
I think originally I can't remember. In my mind it was something, and I could not forget about that.
I think you referred to me as head of the people several times as well.
Head of the people. So I still think you're the head of the people. I would love to talk about your journey and the lessons you learned, and if you don't mind being a little vulnerable about things that we've worked together, or you've worked with our company now for all these years, and I feel like we're all part of one big team and feel very, very close knit. And I know there's been times whenever there's been positives and negatives and things you've learned, things that you wish you would have done differently, or things that you wish we would have done differently, and we've all grown from and developed past that as well. So let's start at the beginning.
Yeah.
You were hired. What did you do? Who was your boss? Where did you work?
Yeah. So I worked on the hospitality team. I was hired initially under Maggie Bellhorn.
Okay, let's talk about what the hospitality team is, because we don't have that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, so the hospitality team was, it ended up being 5 or 6 of us at the end of it. And we would answer phone calls for the stores. We would answer reviews. We would answer Zendesk tickets. A lot of the customer support aspect is kind of where we stepped in.
So we had a call center.
Yeah, essentially.
And you responded to that. Okay, so you were hired as a call person?
Yeah, I'd answer phone calls.
Okay.
And I would answer reviews and then answer Zendesk tickets, anything that comes through the website.
At that point, was anyone at the store level doing that as well, and you were backup, or was that 100% you were answering all of them? Do you remember?
So as far as the phone calls go, it was kind of like a backup situation. So the phone would ring at the location for 20 or 30 seconds, and then if nobody answered the phone, it would kick it to the call center.
Okay.
Here.
How long were you in that role?
Oh, Jason, you didn't tell me I needed to find out the dates.
Just be general or lie very confidently.
Just lie.
Don't lie. I mean, you don't have to lie, but just say a number confidently.
Tell me I need to
and
lie.
I would have no idea. No one's gonna know. No one's gonna fact check you.
I think I was in that role for 2 or 3 years. Was it 2 or 3 years? Yeah, I think that's about right. 2 to 3 years is kind of when I was in that role.
How many people were on that team? Was it like 5, 6?
Yeah, it was about there.
Nathaniel.
Celia.
I can't remember who else. Celia. Yeah.
We had
Karsten.
Austin. Yeah, Karsten.
Yeah. So
There's
many.
a lot of different people. I think at the
Yeah.
end it ended up being 6 to 7 of us
Okay.
total.
So you were in that role, just answering phones, chats, reviews for 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay, let's stop right there and ask what did you learn? What lessons did you grow and learn from that?
I learned a lot. I feel like one thing that I learned was there's always like a solution to everything. There's always like an answer, and a part of my job was like a lot of it was the guest experience and creating a yes for the guest, no matter what that meant. And so I think that there's always a solution, or like you're able to be creative enough to like come up with a solution that is like meaningful, that makes a memory. And that was a big lesson that I learned as a hospitality agent, because I did that all the time. I did that every day. Somebody reached out about a poor experience or something, like we worked with them to like make it right. And then making bookings, trying to go above and beyond. Somebody's booking a birthday party, maybe we suggest like something nearby, or something went wrong. Just creative solutions, really.
Let me put you on the spot. Do you remember any specific examples of a creative solution that you came up with?
I don't remember the like specific details of the situation. However, I do remember the guest reaction to a particular instance. So I do remember this guest. She had a not so great time. I think it was at one of the stores in Ohio. And she expressed that by calling and talking to somebody. She somehow got bounced around between all of the hospitality agents, I think between phone calls and like answering a Zendesk ticket. She had also sent in a Zendesk ticket. And there was a couple other hiccups that happened along the way with trying to help her, essentially. We ended up like collectively writing her like an apology and like mailing her a note, mailing her like a gift card to somewhere where she could go to dinner on us. And she called us back in tears, and she was so moved, and she was like, I just want to talk to whoever's like in charge. And I guess at the time I was in charge, or I was one of the lead hospitality agents, and they're like, here you go, Katelynn. And she was just like, well done. Like, the customer service that you all have given is extraordinary, and I've never experienced this anywhere in my life. And that was really memorable for me.
How did that make you feel in the moment?
Man, like $1,000,000. There are so many times, I know answering phones can be a monotonous task, right? It's not necessarily things that people want to do all the time. But there were many days where I would come in and I'm like, man, I don't want to be here. And I would answer phones and I would get a really awesome interaction, and it would turn my day around. Like, so many times that happened.
Just by connecting with another human.
Just by connecting with another human, or just like making a memory for them.
Yeah.
It was extraordinary.
And I say just, but that is an extraordinary. It's not just. It's connecting with another human is an important part of our life and our happiness, right? Okay, so you did that for 2 to 3 years, or longer or shorter. We don't really know. You just made it up and said 2 to 3 years, which that's what I would guess too.
Yeah.
So that brings us to, I don't know what year, but what was the next phase in your role and your job here?
Yeah, the next phase, was leading that team, essentially. I mean, Maggie left, and then there was a gap that needed to be filled for a leadership role of like managing the hospitality team. So that was my next role. And that ended up being the director of hospitality, I think is technically the next.
I think that's what we called you at that point. Director
at that point, there were so many directors.
There were a lot of directors back then. We had a director of everything.
Yeah.
Director of hospitality. Why did we put you in that position? What was it about you that caused whoever was in charge at that point to say, you can step into that position?
Well, I don't know. That was you. So maybe
That was me. Why did I like you back then? Now I don't because you're leaving
Now I
me.
don't.
You're dead to
now
me.
he wants to fire me.
Just joking.
I think there were several things. I think it was because, one, I was excited about the role. I was excited about the team and what we were doing. I was passionate about it, and passionate about like making things right for the guest. I also feel like, this feels kind of strange because I don't want to like toot my own horn in the sense, but I feel like I'm overall like pretty positive. Like I generally can keep pretty level-headed in crazy situations, or like if there's like an issue that arises, usually I can like crack down and try to figure it out and without being like too over the top. So I think a little bit of that, yeah, and I think the just desire to learn and know more, and like the ability to ask a lot of questions, because I asked so many questions and I still do.
Would you consider yourself curious?
Yes, I would say so.
You ask a lot of questions,
Yeah.
and you had a drive, and you wanted that position, and it seemed to fit your personality as well. Had you led people before that, or is this your first leadership role?
In some capacity, when I was at Lush, I did, in some capacity, yes. Like I would give people feedback, but I wasn't like leading the charge, if that makes sense. So
Sure.
I wasn't obviously like the manager of the store, but like I would help make sure that like people had feedback on the floor.
Okay.
That's really it.
So, rough estimate or just complete guess, how long were you the director of hospitality?
That was for a while. That was up until 2020 when COVID hit.
Until we laid everybody off.
Bye. Yeah.
Okay, so let's pause there. What lessons did you learn as the director of hospitality?
This one's a little bit more vulnerable, I would say. And I'll explain myself a little bit. It's okay to not know what you're doing is the lesson that I learned. Because as somebody, I would consider that like my first leadership role that I've ever been in. And as somebody who's like stepping into a leadership role, I didn't have a lot of experience to fall back on. I was like, I have this big role as a director. And I remember specifically coming back from one of the retreats with Cassie Daly. She was the director of marketing. And I was like, if they knew that I didn't know what the heck I was doing, they would never put me in this role.
Did you say that to her out loud?
Yeah, I said that to her out loud. And I was like, I feel like it's a little bit of imposter syndrome. And she felt the same way. And one of the things, and I'm going to quote Nathaniel on this because we kind of talked a little bit about this yesterday. He's like, most of us don't know what we're doing, but we're confident in the ability that like we'll figure it out together. And that is what I ended up leaning into. But it was really hard at first when I first became a leader. And I felt like I had to have all these qualifications to do that and to be that. But I didn't. Like it was a lot of learning.
How did you learn?
Through experience, through asking questions, asking people that like know better than I do, asking you, asking Jimmy. For a while until he left us, Brad Greenman was a huge like person that I felt like invested in me while he was here.
Brad Greenman, another one
what
that is dead
a
to me.
man.
God.
Dead,
Yeah,
gone.
dead.
See
He's
ya
gone.
in California.
No, we need to get
We
him
don't
back
care
on
about
this
you anymore.
podcast. I wonder if he ever comes back to Lexington.
I don't know.
I don't know either. It's not this podcast. This episode is not about him. It's about you. You're the one leaving, and we're celebrating Katelynn's journey with us.
Yeah.
So, any other lessons that you can think of, or that you wanted to share?
Another one that I would probably say that kind of goes with, and I kind of touch on this a little bit, but it kind of goes actually with both roles. I kind of like continually learned is if you don't know, just ask. If you don't know, ask somebody. There are so many times where, yeah, sure, I could have tried to figure it out on my own. Sometimes I did, but there are some times where I knew the resources around me and I used that, and that saves time and that saves money ultimately too. And I really don't think that people ask enough questions. Usually. So
Do you think that's because, did you naturally ask a lot of questions when you were in that position? When you said that to Cassie, were you thinking, I just need to ask more questions? Or I think a lot of people, the reason they don't ask questions is because they're in the role, they want to look like they're competent. And not necessarily from an ego position, but just a position of, I need to make sure that everybody feels like I can do this job.
Yeah.
And my superiors know, they feel confident in me. And so if I ask questions like I don't know what I'm doing, then that may look like I am weak, or I don't know how to do my job well. Was that running through your mind at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I was naturally, like when I was in hospitality, I think I was really good at asking questions. I remember, I'm like, Nathaniel, you remember all those questions I used to ask you? Like it was a lot. It was excessive. But I think you're right. Once I got into that role, there was just something that was a little bit more intimidating to ask questions. It could have also been the fact that I was intimidated by you for the first few years of me being here. And that was really,
personally?
Yes, by you personally. I don't know what it was, but I was like, man, I don't know. Like talking to you was hard at first.
Oh.
And like asking you questions would have been very hard, like really difficult for me, because I just didn't know how to do that.
Was it the way that I responded, or something else?
I think that well, okay, so it probably has a lot to do with just me and the fact that like I had never worked in a place where I was also like in the same area as like an owner, or like somebody who was like way at the top, if that makes sense. So there was like a lot of fear, I guess, or just like it wasn't really anything that you did, the way that you responded to things. It also could have been the fact that you did my interview and you intimidated me during the interview. And so I was like, this guy's intimidating. I'm not going to I'm going to steer clear of him, make sure I'm doing my tasks when he's coming around.
Wow. Well, I assure you, I'm not in my mind. I'm not like, oh, I'm going to try to intimidate you.
I know. And knowing you now is like, it's so silly. But like at that point, like it was something that like I dealt with internally, where I was like, man, I've got to talk and ask like questions, and that was a little hard for me at first.
Do you remember how you worked past that?
I think that it was just a time thing. It was like over time, and you like took me to this director of hospitality role, and you were like, okay, you're going to report to me. And that kind of forced that to happen, but like in a good way, not in a way that I was like, I'm terrified to work with you, but it was like in a good way, because I was able to like learn how you view things. I was able to learn like your heart behind the business, your heart behind what you're doing, and like just learn about you as a person. I think also like being able to go, sometimes when everybody would go out to drinks or something and you would be there, or like going out to dinner, or like doing stuff like that really helped break those barriers, because it felt like in those situations it was more comfortable, and I was able to talk to you more and just get to know you more.
A little bit of the human element that comes into play that's not there if you only see somebody at work for a few hours a day or whatever.
Yeah.
And you're only interacting with them about work things. That's hard to do.
Yeah.
I gotcha. So you were in that role for up until COVID, and then you got furloughed, correct?
Yeah.
Talk to me about when we came back after the furlough, what that looked like.
Man, I was so excited to get back. I am a people person. I love being around people, and COVID was very hard for me overall. And I was so excited to just do something. So coming back was really whatever you all needed. I was like, yes, I will be there. Whatever it is, I will be there. Whatever it is, I will do it. Like part-time, full-time, some of the time, I don't care. Like I just want something else, something like I can do. So I was really excited about that. Came back, I was still like director of hospitality, but I didn't have a team. And so that was really interesting. So it ended up, it was
what
more.
What were you doing?
It was more focused on like the customer interaction overall, and like in the store at that point. And shortly thereafter is when we started talking about like Illumi and creating that, like creating the training. Like I think that comes like shortly after that, right?
I think you're right, because we brought you back, but we decided we did not need the call center anymore. And
Yeah.
when we brought you back, we weren't sure if anything was still going to function.
Yeah.
If we were really going to bounce back. We were able to open again, but we didn't know if anyone would come and pay us to do escape rooms anymore. And so we decided not to bring the hospitality team back and have a call center and answer phones here. And we pushed that to the store level, which we feel like really once we did that and the numbers were way better, we were missing way less calls and all of those things. And it's more personal with the locals, so we can talk about that if you want, but that was the reason we didn't bring the team back. And then you focus more on how do we care about hospitality and guest interaction within the store level. And then at some point it seemed like it morphed into this other role. Do you remember that transition or how we got from one to the other?
I do.
Oh, you do. Okay.
There are like some core memories in my mind. The first one is when you moved me to, rather than an hourly to a salary position, I was like riding a tricycle around, and you had a conversation with my husband earlier that day, like at the coffee shop, and you like walked in and you were like, hey, let's go talk. And that's when you like gave me the my first ever salary position. It was huge.
Because I talked to your husband at a coffee shop?
You talked to my husband about a coffee shop, and he's like, yeah, maybe you should put her on salary. And you were like, I'm going to do that.
Wow.
That's literally like what he told me like later that day. He goes, yeah, I talked to Jason this morning. I was like, wait, what?
That's
it was
hilarious.
The weirdest story. Anyway, that was a core memory. Random. Sorry, that kind of went off
I
topic.
believe it. Yeah.
The other core memory I have is when I think I was coming up to do just like our regular weekly check-in, and you were coming in, you were unpacking your things, and you were like, oh no, you were packing up your things. We just finished our check-in, and you're like, I have something else I want to talk to you about. And I was like, okay, what's that? And you were like, I think you should apply for the director of culture position. And I was like, what? I was like, I never saw anything about a director of culture position, never heard about it. And I was like, I would love to know more.
Did we have that job posted?
I don't think so.
I told you to apply for a job we didn't have.
I mean, I could be wrong. I actually never searched it online, but
I don't remember seeing any applicants for that.
Really? I know. I don't think we did. And I was like,
I wonder if I
didn't know there
made
was
that
an
up
opening.
right on the spot.
You might have.
Yeah. We just like,
you're like, I'm running with this position.
Let's do this. And by the way, this position I just created in my head.
Yeah.
Why don't you apply for it? In fact, you don't have to apply for it.
You don't have to apply. You got the job.
Did you apply?
No.
What?
No, we just sat down and we talked more about what that looked like. So it was you, me, and Jimmy. We met in the front conference room, and we talked about like what your hopes were. I think one of the things that you all do well is you don't you let like roles be created by the person. Like you look at somebody's strength and you're like, I think you'll be really good at something like this. I don't really know what that role is going to look like, but I really want you to focus on this, see where the gaps are, and try to fill that. I feel like the way that you all do that gives a lot of freedom. But so that's, I think, how that formed. You were like, I don't really know. These are kind of the core things I'm thinking, but we want you to do it.
So we moved from director of hospitality, which was centered here kind of at the warehouse when we came up with the concept of hospitality, to director of culture, which is focused on still guests, but through our team members at the local stores.
Yeah.
And then we transitioned to director of the people.
Director of the people.
The employee experience. When did we move from culture to employee experience? Do you remember that?
It was shortly after my official like role change happened. I think it was like maybe a month after the role change, and we're like, man, maybe this doesn't quite fit what we were thinking we wanted you to focus on. And then we think that it's a little bit more in this employee experience. Like I do also remember, this is another core memory of like coming into an ops meeting, and we were like, let's give everybody new names and new titles.
That was not that long ago. And I did not, I don't know. I was reading something or listening to something, and I just decided, I think I heard someone say, I'm the head of something. on some website or something, and I was like, I like that better. The ring
Yeah.
of that is better than director.
It is.
Director sounds so, I don't know, formal.
Yeah, it sounds very formal.
It sounds less, to me, team-oriented,
Yeah.
but I don't know why.
Very direct, if you will.
Very direct. Well, that's a mom joke,
Sorry.
I guess.
I got to work on them,
That's
you know?
awesome.
Can you please insert the drum roll there?
It's
Thanks.
very direct. So we moved you to head of employee experience.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, employee experience is that role is all about culture and values. It's
It
making
is.
sure that the employees, our team members, are having the experience of culture and values that we want them to have at every level. And the reason we focus on that, of course, is because we believe if we're focused on our team, caring about them, showing hospitality to them, that they will in turn show the hospitality and value every human that walks through, the humanity of people that we sell products to, which is our experience. So that left you with the head of. How long have you been in this role? Is it been about a year since that happened, or
It's
was
been,
it longer?
I think it's been a little bit over a
Yeah.
year, but not much.
Yeah, because it was when we launched Illumi, which was almost probably 2 years, wasn't it? So a year and a half, 2 years ago, we launched Illumi, and you took over that and like led the way getting that up and running.
Yeah.
And we've gotten to a good place with Illumi. And that's because of you and your hard work of figuring it out. And that's not the easiest platform it's not super difficult, but it also doesn't have all the features we want it.
It has some weird quirks.
It
But,
does.
you know, you just learn to love it. You learn how to work with them,
That's right.
you know?
I would come to you and be like, I want it to do this. And you're like, I don't think it does this. And like, we'll spend a day thinking about it and call them and tell them that they should do this. And you had to be like, okay, fine. I don't know how much you actually did that. And we would come back and be like, no, they don't do it.
I would tell them our feedback. Yeah. And they are actually releasing a new platform in the fall where they're going to do an app.
A new platform? Like we can't use our same platform?
I think we can still use our same platform.
It
but
will migrate over?
Yeah, I can't remember. I don't know the details.
Well, you'll
have to
leaving,
ask.
so now we
you'll
don't
have
know.
to ask Courtney. Courtney will know the
Courtney
details.
say, okay, good.
Yeah, she's
Someone will
taking
know.
over that. She'll know. But they're gonna switch it. Yeah, to where they'll have.
Oh,
an
that's
app.
good news.
Yeah, that is good news.
Man, the app will be a game changer.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So during your time as head of employee experience, give us the lessons you've learned from that last year and a half.
Yeah, so I would say, there are kind of a couple of lessons that I've learned that I kind of want to touch on. One of them is a little, some of these I feel like kind of like go hand in hand, but I did say be curious, which is funny because we just talked about that. We talked about asking questions, but being curious, like I learned a lot how to be curious within my role. So like there were times where I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing and I needed to ask you. At this point, I'm definitely more comfortable with asking you questions.
That's good.
So within my role, but also within myself, we did that, we did that emotional intelligence training here and learning like what I'm feeling and why I'm feeling it. That was something that was really big for me, and just having curiosity about those feelings and then having curiosity about others. One of the things that my role has been focusing on, my recent role was focusing on like our team members, talking to our managers on a regular basis and just learning how to ask really intentional questions. So I would come with a few questions prepared, but sometimes it was just like on the fly. You had to learn how to like ask those questions in the moment too, of just like pulling more things out, of just like saying, how do you feel about that, or like what does that mean, and just getting really specific. And that was something like that was feedback that you had given me maybe about 6 to 8 months ago. And so
about diving deeper.
Yeah.
Because you would get off
curious.
a call and you'd be like, hey, here are the things. And
I don't know what this
I would
means.
ask a follow-up question and be like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I think you almost just needed permission to do it. And we talked about a lot of things, but it was how do you process those things? in the moment, it's tough.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to think of everything. You've got your list that you're trying to move through. You're trying to accomplish a goal with this phone call. And so you've got a lot of things running through your brain. But how do you sit with that answer? How do you make sure you kind of flag those issues and say, oop, I got to go back there. We even talked about like very specific things. Take notes during. At some point you were like, I don't think I want to take notes because I don't want to act like I'm not paying attention.
Yeah.
But we talked about how you could still take notes, just make it obvious. I'm going to take notes during this and it's okay. And if you need to pause and write something down, it's fine. You can go back. Because I couldn't do that. I would not remember anything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I remember that conversation and digging deeper. And I think you've gotten really, really good about that. And now when you come, you're like, and this, and this, and this. Have I answered all the possible questions? I think it's good.
But I think it's also like, I think once I found out what that format of those meetings should look like, and like you said, having the permission, I felt like it almost, having those boundaries almost gave me more curiosity. I don't know if that makes sense, but I felt like I was able to be a little bit more curious.
Yeah, I mean, we could spend some time on that. I think you're right. I think those boundaries made you more curious, and I think the reason is because it gave you safety.
Yeah.
So it was a safe place. Now I know it's okay to ask these questions. I'm supposed to, and so I can stay here and do this. I'm not trying to accomplish some other goal.
Yeah.
And I do think that those things go hand in hand with curiosity. So that's a really, really valid point.
Mm-hmm.
Well, to close our time, do you have any last words to all of the wonderful Orange Perspective audience before you move on to your next stage in life?
Man, I do. This is more like advice, I guess. You could say you asked about advice, and I do have one bit of advice. And that is to say yes. So I remember we had a ops meeting not too long ago. And we were talking about, I don't remember what we were talking about, but I had mentioned like, sometimes I just like don't know when to say no. Like I say yes to too many things. And I was like, maybe I need to work on that. And then you kind of jumped in and you were like, well, actually thinking about it, like all of you all here at this table, the ops team, all of you are here because you said yes to so many things. And reflecting back on my journey, that's exactly right. I mean, there were so many things that I said yes to. If you want to move up, like, say yes. And I think like that doesn't mean that you have to like sign your life away to your job. That's not what I'm really saying. I'm just like, even if you can't say like a full yes, like give a creative yes. So like if you can't say like, oh well, maybe I can't do that full project, but I will contribute by doing this. Like find a way to contribute, find a way to like be present in everything that's happening around you.
Yeah, that's good. I remember that conversation, and it wasn't that you shouldn't say no. It was like, how do you not jump to a no? And I think so many times younger people want to jump to a place where they're like, I need to put margin in my life and all of those things, which is good. Have a work-life balance. That's not what we're saying. But when you are moving in a direction or you want to grow with a company and you want to be able to grow in a role, you have to say yes to things and say yes to things that you're not even necessarily 100% confident you can do.
Literally my story.
You're willing, right? Which you're willing to just jump in and do it. So I think that's really good advice.
Yeah,
it's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank
you for your years of service with us.
Thank you all.
You're not going anywhere, so you'll be in Lexington. We hope that you will stop by and say hello from time to time. We are sad that you are leaving, and we'll give you a last hurrah. We have a little going away party tonight, and then on Friday.
Yeah.
And as always, the door's always open. I think you'll be back in a few years. Once your kids are older,
it's just
and you're
waiting
like,
for the call.
You're like your mother-in-law. You're like, I think I need to do something else. Jason, what do you got for me? I'm like, well, you want to feel intimidated again? No, I'm just joking. No, the door's always open. We loved having you. You've added so much to our business, and you've definitely are leaving while putting your stamp on. And your positivity will resonate for years to come here, Katelynn. So thank you so much for all that you do.
It's been a pleasure.
All right. Well, good luck.
Thanks.